Hallmark is known for making rom-coms, but this week I'm not so sure the movie that I watched necessarily fit in that category. It's a cute story and there was definitely some character growth and development, but was it a love story? I mean, if the two leads remained co-workers and had no romantic interest in one another, would that have changed the outcome of the story in any way? Well, as you can see, I've got a lot to talk about this week, so let's dive right in and get to it. Hi, I'm Stephanie, and this is the Magical Movie Club, a place to come and chat about everything Hallmark movies. On August 31st, we watched Head Over Heels, starring Rebecca Dalton and Olivier Renaud. I also want to give credit to Alexandra Castillo, because in my opinion, her role had more of an impact on the story than Olivier Renaud. I might even make the argument that he really had a supporting role in this one. And as I just mentioned, I don't know that I would even consider this a rom-com, necessarily, because it's not a love story. Head Over Heels is a story about how an unknown shoe repairer, would that make her a cobbler, helped to turn around a failing shoe company and make it a thriving success as it once had been, all while saving it from a pending hostile takeover. The movie opens in Manhattan with some background information on a shoe designer by the name of Delaney Diaz.
And bring out your finest couture because Fashion Week is officially 4 weeks away and we have some tea to spill.
In this short montage, we learn that she was once highly regarded in the designer footwear industry, but has fallen from grace due to a publicity scandal a few years ago.
It's make or break time. Will Delaney rule the runways again or be destined for the walk of shame?
Next, we head over to a small family business called Connor's Shoe Repair. Addie, is seen here sewing what I would call some frilly, leafy fabric onto a pair of men's construction boots. While her father is actually admiring her design work.
Addie, looks like a whole new shoe.
Oh, well, Mr. Simmons likes to stand out.
Now, normally I keep my opinions on fashion to myself because I'm grounded enough to know that I have no fashion sense whatsoever. But I'm sorry, those are absolutely hideous. My husband worked at a shipyard for 20 years, and I can't picture a single person he worked with ever being seen wearing boots looking like these. Okay, I've got it off my chest now. I'll let it go. Walking in next comes her sister, who has a 1-year-old daughter, Ruby, and whose husband is overseas.
In 5 months, her father will be on leave and he can take over the lullaby duties.
She also mentions that she recently met someone who works in HR for Delaney Diaz. She's the shoe designer mentioned in the opening scenes, and they just happen to have an opening for a receptionist job.
I met this lady, Janice, at Mommy and Me class, and she works in HR at Delaney Diaz.
And she's got an interview scheduled for Addie tomorrow. Now, I want to point out here that her dad says he fully supports her.
I want my daughters to follow their dreams. What are you doing? Get out of here.
And he practically boots her out the shop. Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that one. But keep that in the back of your mind, because later on he completely changes his tune and does a 180 on her. Okay, on to Manhattan. This is where we see Addie walking into a bustling front office area, and the camera zooms in on her shoes to point out that she's wearing plain flats. Now again, I don't claim to know anything about fashion, but I even thought that seemed odd for someone showing up for an interview to work at a high-end designer shoe company. Oh, and not to mention, Addie aspires to be a shoe designer herself. But what do I know? It's here where she meets the temporary receptionist, Thomas. He's an HR assistant filling in until they can hire someone. But when she meets Janice, the HR rep who's supposed to interview her, she learns that there's a more pressing position that just opened up.
Oh, no, she can't. Look at her outfit. She's not ready.
Ignore him.
And that is an assistant to Delaney Diaz herself. Now, Janice doesn't sugarcoat anything about the job. Delaney Diaz is very difficult to work with, and they've gone through several assistants.
She cried on day 2.
How long did she work here?
3 weeks. Better than most. It's the 5th assistant we've lost this year.
Addie, on the other hand, is almost too cheerful. Perky, you might say, and definitely starstruck just by being here. And she hasn't even met Delaney Diaz in person yet. But I will say, if Thomas, the high-strung, overly anxious, and over-dramatic assistant HR we just met a moment ago, is still working here,
Code Magma. Major eruption. Evacuate.
I'd say Addie stands a decent chance. Well, she never quite makes it to an interview. She's not quite hired on the spot, But she does help her situation by offering to clear out the messy desk left by the last assistant who just walked out.
This was Delaney's assistant's desk. She didn't even take her personals.
Apparently, Delaney Diaz is supposed to have a meeting in the next 15 minutes, and Janice freaks out because she doesn't want her to see the mess. So while Addie is cleaning things up, we meet Austin walking down the hall in bright white sneakers. This is the scene you've probably already seen from the commercials. It happens to be the sneak peek video. Addie turns around and suddenly spills coffee all over his white sneakers.
Oh no. I am so sorry.
So she takes him over to the design room where they have all sorts of fabrics and color samples and sewing materials, perhaps even better than her dad's own repair shop. Mind you, she doesn't have a job here yet. But this is where she whips out what looks like brand new shoes in even less time than it took her to clean up that awful desk.
I made them two-tone so that they'd have a little bit more flair.
But in all seriousness, it is a much better meet cute than bumping into each other and being snarky and rude to one another like we often see. So I'm not complaining. The new shoes were actually pretty nice this time. Austin is also impressed enough by her talent and quick thinking that he walks her over to Delaney Diaz to finally meet her in person. You'd think that this would be great, right? No, actually, it was pretty cringeworthy.
I am standing in front of Delaney freaking Diaz. I mean, come on.
Okay, you can go now.
Who wrote this script? Did I mention the teleplay yet? Maybe there's a reason. Addie does not present herself well.
Wearing your shoes is like putting your best foot forward.
But the point of that whole fiasco was well taken because she realized it too. She acted like a silly teenage fangirl.
It's not the end of the world. I still have a job here.
Well, we wouldn't have a story if she didn't end up getting the job after all, so thank goodness Austin went to bat for her and it worked.
What? I got the job.
This next conversation that she has on her first day is telling. Thomas hands her a to-do list from Delaney, and then he told her, don't ask questions.
When does she want all this done?
I don't ask questions.
Why not? What happens?
Your funeral.
You know, when you can't ask questions, you're obligated to make a lot of assumptions, and when you make assumptions, well, we all know what that means. But it also explains why she makes a lot of mistakes. And maybe this is Delaney's way of testing her to find out just what kind of decisions she makes under pressure. Oh, and one of those mistakes involves the progression of the iced chai lattes. In the beginning, she messed that up too.
Seems you watered the latte as well?
But over the course of the movie, she got that right with the help of Austin. The better they get, the more confident Addie becomes. And this is also where we learn a little bit more about Austin's story.
Delaney was my mom's best friend, and when my mom passed away, she stuck around.
Austin's dad also owns a PR firm, and Delaney's been a longtime client of his. That's made it easy to stay close by all these years. But his dad has also been really hard on him, and Austin would like to open up his own PR firm someday. And last we learn a bit more about Delaney's story. She hardened a bit after she was sued for stealing ideas by a disgruntled assistant.
The guy was disgruntled. It was all false, but the headlines and the rumors remain, which I think is what hardened her a bit.
And now she's facing a hostile buyout of her company. As you can see, this movie has a lot going on and a lot of backstory. Now take a look at the image in this scene. Addie is setting up a conference room for a meeting when Thomas rolls in a rack with all these shoes that Delaney's going to pitch to potential buyers. Besides the shoes, what else do you see here on the rack? Numbers under each pair of shoes. Now my question for you is, does it take a rocket scientist to figure out that these numbers somehow correspond to that particular pair of shoes? Or is it safe to assume they're all completely random and it won't matter if they get all mixed up? Yeah, see where I'm going with this? Addie assumes the latter, and when she does arrange the shoes in a beautiful presentation on the table, it never once occurred to her that the numbers were significant.
Here we go. It's here.
Yeah, that looks great.
I don't know how hard would it have been to take a picture of the rack before moving any of the shoes around. Well, the meeting happened and it was a disaster.
My apologies. There appears to be a little misprint.
I am so sorry. I didn't realize that the numbers corresponded with the prices.
Well, Renee.
And as you've already figured out, Delaney's not a nice person under the best of circumstances. She was understandably hard on Addie after this fiasco. But to her credit, Delaney also maintained her composure the entire time, both with Addie and her customer.
I'm sure that you and I can work something out. Why don't we talk a little more in my office?
I'm not saying she was nice, but she was in control.
Excuses, Addie. They're tools of apathy. All they do is ensure that your life remains the same today as it was yesterday.
And much to Addie's surprise, she wasn't fired. So the next morning on her way into the office, she picked up Delaney's iced chai latte, but with Austin's help this time. He showed her a trick to keep the ice fresh until Delaney was ready to drink it.
Well, all you gotta do is grab a batch of fresh ice on your way out.
Oh, that is very...
Austin also gave her some advice. Delaney has some serious trust issues, so when he saw Addie's sketchbook, he suggested she not make any design pitches right away, or they may both wind up out of a job.
Don't pitch her just yet, because if you do, we might never work in the city ever again.
So I want to pause for a moment. I found myself rewinding and replaying scenes quite a bit in this one, and that's because there are a lot of details to keep track of, and sometimes I had a little trouble wrapping my head around everything. Like right here, for example.
She doesn't discuss anything other than with her design team. You should see their contracts. They're ironclad.
And then he goes to tell her that if she can earn Delaney's trust, she'll invite her in.
And then she'll have you sign a 50-page contract. Easy.
Over the course of the movie, Delaney slowly starts to trust Addie's instincts and her ideas, and she shows us that she really does have a soft spot for Austin.
Austin's father is very hard on him sometimes.
Like, she agreed to go to what she expected to be a dreadfully boring art event.
All right, I'll make an appearance. 15 minutes, no more, but no less.
Austin spiced it up a bit until Delaney's nemesis showed up. Yes, I think he was the former disgruntled assistant who made that awful accusation about her stealing designs and ruining her reputation.
What happened? Couldn't steal any new designs to show.
Yeah, he's now a reporter who's out to get her, and he keeps popping up throughout the whole movie. Of course, it doesn't mean Addie doesn't make some colossal mistakes along the way.
Little mishap. That's what you call yanking a world-renowned handbag designer into your little rescue mission?
But somehow, Delaney has a knack for turning every one of them around to her advantage.
I need you to add a lunch for tomorrow.
Of course, with whom?
Armand Alance. His assistant will be calling with details.
As a matter of fact, things appear to be going well until this scene, which still puzzles me. They're out at a photo shoot when a stranger walks up to Addie, and Addie starts telling her all about their new line coming out.
It's the day-to-night pump. So women can go from the office to a cocktail party without changing shoes.
She even has a design sketch of it lying out in the open for her to see. For one, when did Delaney trust Addie enough to let her in on those details? I thought she only trusted her inner design team. And for another, why would Addie open up like that to a complete stranger? Because it turns out that stranger was the competition. Not only that, she's a spy for the competition that's trying to put Delaney out of business with that hostile takeover.
A fan of a hostile takeover, maybe. She works for Franco Chasseur.
Well, another head scratcher for me was what happens next at home. Remember earlier when I pointed out that Addie's father was super supportive and encouraged her to venture off in pursuit of her dream? Yeah, that all changed in a matter of weeks.
What about this morning? Where exactly do we fit on your priority list?
This is where I was starting to get a little upset with her father because I didn't care for the way he treated her here, which just added to more pressure to her already being very stressed already. He knows this job opportunity is extremely important to her, and I think he should have understood that this is just a 4-week temporary trial period where Addie has a chance and needs to show Delaney Diaz what she could do for her to get ready for the most important fashion week of her life. Addie was single. She wasn't in a relationship with anyone, and she wasn't Ruby's mother. This should have been the perfect time in her life to go all in to do whatever Delaney asks for just 4 weeks. We're not talking years or even months, but talk about pressure. And what does her dad do? He doesn't think about Addie. All he's concerned about is himself and how Addie's inconveniencing him, and that disappointed me. And because of this added pressure from her family, Addie went to Delaney just 2 weeks into the job and asked her for more work-life balance. That didn't feel right to me. I actually thought it was a little out of line for a probationary position because, again, and apparently I can't stress this enough, this was only 4 weeks we're talking about. I mean, after the fashion show, if Delaney Diaz is still in business, then I could understand having these conversations if this type of pressure continues.
We had a crisis.
A crisis? The stock market crashing is a crisis. A tsunami is a crisis.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about it. It turns out the reason she was called in on a Sunday was because the competition stole their idea that she, Addie, leaked at that photo op. And now they're only 2 weeks away from Fashion Week, and they need to come up with a new design and a campaign for the finale.
We were going to use it for the big finale in the show. We can't use it at all now. Now it's just gone. Poof.
We are going to figure something out.
So either Addie needed to be there to help fix the mess that she created, or she needed to go. I have to say I'm surprised she wasn't fired after that.
I kind of have a crisis. You wanted a job in fashion, this is the job.
But that wasn't even the big crisis. The big one was what her sister did. I knew things would get bad when she was looking through Addie's sketchbook and she forged Delaney Diaz's signature at the bottom of one of those sketches.
You mean like... Looks right to me.
A perfect forgery, by the way. And I know she was just playing around, but is that normal to do? I ask this particularly because it's not like that sketch accidentally ended up in Delaney Diaz's portfolio. Her sister intentionally ends up putting it in there. Yeah, because that's going to go over well. Obviously, by the end, everything does work out, and they all get their happy ending. But this whole thing with her sister was a reach for me. And notice I didn't talk much about any romance. Yes, Addie and Austin did end up together, but their relationship was not the main focus of the movie. Like I said in the beginning, the story was not affected one way or another by whether or not those two ended up together. What I loved about the movie, though, was the character growth in Delaney Diaz. There were so many scenes where she acted tough as nails, but then she turned around and showed us a glimpse that she was really a softie on the inside. And she learned to appreciate and respect Addie and Austin by the end.
Thank you all so much. I can't tell you what it means to me that you're doing this.
Which is an inspiration to me because I'm not so sure I would have been able to do the same if I were in her position. I would like to think I would, but I guess really they both gave each other some trying moments. So how should I rate this one? I wasn't impressed by the romance, nor by Addie's family. I know her sister had the best intentions, but I don't agree with her method. But Delaney Diaz was the one worth watching, in my opinion. I know in the beginning she was awful, but that was intentional. And look at her transformation by the end. And I know that wouldn't have happened without Addie and Austin. And Addie never would have had that opportunity if it hadn't been for her sister meddling. Am I a walking contradiction today? How about I give this a 3.5? My original instinct was to give it a 3, but the growth in Delaney's character was worth the extra half. Well, I think I've talked about this one long enough. Next week begins the first of the new Fall into Love season, and to kick it off, Hallmark's bringing us 2 of their biggest stars, Lacey Chabert and Brennan Elliott, with His and Hers. I can't wait to see it with you. I actually wish Hallmark would show us more of their new ones just a little bit early on Hallmark Movies Now, which is about to become Hallmark Plus. It would make a huge difference if even they released them maybe just 1 or 2 days early. This past week is an example of where that would have been so helpful. Although, speaking of their paid channel, The Heiress and the Handyman is on there this month, so I'm about 1/3 of the way through it now. Hopefully, I'll have that review up and ready to go much sooner. Until then, and as always, thank you so much for being a part of the Magical Movie Club. If you like this too and want to see more, please let me know by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Also, if you're interested, I have links to the preview video as well as the movie page for more details about Head Over Heels at Hallmark.com. I'll be back next week to chat more about our favorite magical movies.
Oh, what's that? I think my phone's ringing and a delivery's here and the lobby's on fire.